Going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having yourselves a lovely day wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this. We're heading towards Christmas, getting to be the end of the year, and it's a perfect time to jump into a new SCP series. We're going to check out the start of Admonition. We're gonna start the Admonition series here in the SCP universe. We're gonna be checking out exploring the SCP Foundation, SCP-6820 Termination Attempt by the Exploring series. This is the first video in the Admonition series of SCP videos, so looking forward to getting into this one. It's another big canon that's a fan favorite, kind of like the Ouroboros cycle. So I was really big fan of the Ouroboros cycle and really looking forward to this one, and Red Tape is another one. So yeah, we're just gonna jump into this here today. So again, links will be down below as always in the description to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring series channel. Please do me a favor, if you enjoy this video as we go through it, make sure to give it a like. And if you enjoy the Exploring series content, be sure to go over there and hit that sub button on his channel. Show the man some love and some support. He makes a lot of great content for the SCP universe, as well as for Warhammer 40k and a lot of others. So check out his stuff. Yeah, we're just gonna jump into this here. Again, this is SCP-6820 Termination Attempt by the Exploring series. Volume's up here. Let's go.
SCP-6820 Termination Attempt. The Foundation does not ordinarily go to extreme measures to destroy an anomaly, although they do more commonly go to extreme measures to contain one. Containment is just generally a safer and more reliable practice to deal with dangerous anomalies, despite what other groups might say, as there's absolutely no predicting what will happen with an anomaly when it is destroyed, or...
Yeah, I feel like in the SCP universe, it's very much a case of dealing with the devil you know. It's better to contain something, to study it, and to know that it is contained, because, again, who knows what the consequences are for eliminating some kind of SCP. It could literally destroy the universe. You know what I mean? So,
or even attempted to be destroyed. Sometimes, though, an anomaly comes along that is a bit too much even for the Foundation to deal with peacefully, and the only answer they end up with is neutralization. SCP-6820 offers up a rather unique situation, in that not only did the Foundation want this anomaly terminated, they killed it so completely that they lost all memory of it and why they wanted it dead so bad. Unfortunately, that ends up being part of the problem. The file opens with a notice from the Records and Information Security Administration of the Foundation, letting us know that this file originates from an alternate universe. It was sent here automatically due to an agreement between multiple alternate foundations in case of an irreparable XK-class event for...
So this sounds like this SCP anomaly is potentially a multiversal situation where maybe it affects, multiple realities, and depending on what they do, it could have an effect on other ones. So they've sent out warnings to other SCP foundations from other realities. Interesting.
For cautionary purposes. In other words, this file came from a doomed universe, where the Foundation couldn't save the day. Moving on, the file describes SCP-6820 as a highly classified, advanced Eigen weapon located within an enormous subterranean facility beneath Site-01. The weapon is the final result of Project Anti-Kill, an evocatively titled operation supervised by O5-8 with the express purpose of the irreversible universal neutralization of SCP-6820-A. The project...
Now, am I thinking of a different SCP, or is this the one where it's like a group of kids? I'm trying to remember the specifics, but like it essentially was like a group of like kid reality benders, I think, that were put together into a machine, and through them being combined together, it's able to essentially destroy anything, like even gods. It's kind of like the SCP's ultimate weapon against things like the Scarlet King or maybe the Deer or something, where when they have an entity that they can't actually contain, this is the last line of defense to like destroy something like that. Is that what this is, or am I thinking of something else?
Project was also led by director Gears and involved a great number of various departments, from metaphysics to temporal anomalies and even quantum supermechanics. The project was initiated in
Okay.
January of 1968 and operated until the weapon was activated in 2021, resulting in a reality restructuring event which retroactively erased 6820-A and its noospheric content from existence. The weapon is also still running, with so far no idea of how to deactivate it. So now the Foundation has no idea what they erased from existence, why they spent so much effort building this weapon, or how to turn it off.
That is quite the conundrum, yeah.
We're provided a transcript of a conference from 2006 between 05-8, Director Gears, Paratechnician Dr. Placeholder, and Esophysics Director Genevieve. Genevieve called for an unscheduled conference after the day's conclusion of Project Anti-Kill activities to discuss a plan of her own. 05-8 is upset about the sudden meeting, claiming that it doesn't necessarily take precedence over others unless they've suddenly happened to solve an 80-year containment crisis. Genevieve continues, saying that the Overseer has seen tens of thousands of termination attempts on the entity they're trying to remove, and she knows their collective success rate. She directs
Dr. Placeholder just sounds funny. Like it sounds like a meta name or something like that. Like, I don't know what to name this person, so I'm literally just going to name them Dr. Placeholder as a placeholder until I figure out a better name, and then they're just stuck with placeholder. You know what I mean? Like,
the Esophysics Department, which is concerned with manifestations of concepts within reality.
okay.
An embodiment of the concept red would carry all of the characteristics conceptually associated with that color, such as
Gotcha.
being angry, or desirable, or malevolent. An embodiment is a physical item that's shaped like an idea, and over time, this shape can change as human intelligence develops and how we think about an idea. If the esophysical nature of an entity is not readily apparent, it can be discerned by comparing the entity's change over time to changes in human conception.
Okay.
Their department has noted changes in the entity and correlated them to human development. 05-8 says that she's not the first to suggest this, and whether or not the entity is a conceptual entity has no impact on the success of the project. Placeholder tells him that if that were true, she wouldn't be talking to him, and tells him to chill out. Genevieve continues, although parts of the text are redacted. It seems that the entity has been consistently changing its reaction to containment and termination efforts over time, corresponding with the growth of the human intellectual capacity. Whatever
Interesting.
concept it embodies is extremely complex, and it is so large that it can only partially intersect with the noosphere.
This does kind of remind me of like Scarlet King stuff in a way, right? Like the idea that the Scarlet King was one thing, and then like the Devourer was another, but then over time, because of people's thoughts and beliefs in them, they basically became the same entity, and thus really became kind of the same entity. And I guess the Scarlet King became even more powerful, et cetera, you know, that kind of a situation. So it is kind of like it feels like it's um I guess an observer effect. I don't know if that's really the right term for this situation, but like what we perceive is changing essentially reality, or at least uh the reality of this SCP.
If whatever concept it embodies is not native to human thought, it can be removed without risk. Her plan then is to eject the concept of the entity from the noosphere, or the collection of human consciousness.
Yeah.
If there are no minds
The
left
unconscious
able to
collection,
comprehend
whatever.
a given concept, any objects embodying that concept will be broken and will be forced to follow natural law, which in this case means that they become killable.
There was another SCP that talked about the noosphere. I can't remember which one it was now. But it was also something kind of similar along the lines to this.
I think a number of you likely have figured out what the entity is at this point, but I'll leave it unsaid for the moment. Director Genevieve afterwards submitted a sub-proposal for Project Anti-Kill, which was slated for express approval. The sub-proposal involved the construction of the Eigen weapon, after several decades of Project Anti-Kill's failed termination attempts, which involved testing with other SCPs, including
Right.
096 and 173. These failed attempts have, however, led the SO Physics Department to try a new approach to the project: the development of a weapon that can conceptually purge the entity from reality. The weapon would be
Yeah.
housed beneath Site-01 to both ensure access to ample resources, as well as hide it from relevant groups of interest. This would involve the excavation of over 50 million cubic meters of Earth, which, thanks to anomalous technologies, would only take 8 months. The chamber housing the weapon would include various mechanisms such as the central computing node, containing a complex self-iterative neural network. This network would be fed all records pertaining to the entity as training data, with the eventual goal of scrubbing all instances of the entity's conceptual structure from consensus reality.
So they are essentially creating an AI and feeding it all knowledge of this thing so it could seek it out and essentially erase it from all knowing existence, like literally clean slate it. Interesting.
There would also be an ontokinetic sink developed by both Dr. Placeholder and Director Gears, designed as an enormous reality anchoring mechanism and ontokinetic interface. Ontokinetics is essentially just another word for reality bending within the SCP universe.
Okay, I haven't heard that.
The mechanism will
before.
read the sum quantum informational content of the universe and encode it into a readable format, allowing other systems to read and react to the entire state of reality. It will thus work in conjunction with the computing node to enact localized reality restructuring events, ensuring the indefinite non-existence of the entity. Other mechanisms include additional servers for self-optimization and analysis, a dual anti-fusion reactor, databases, and calibration towers.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? But isn't them going through the process of doing this contradicting the process of doing this, right? Like they're trying to they're creating an AI and essentially is what it sounds like. And they're feeding it all knowledge of whatever this SCP is that they're trying to destroy. So like this AI could go through and wipe out everything, but then the AI is going to know it. So then, like, the AI would have to self terminate, but then would the AI not want to self terminate and thus become this SCP in and of itself because the AI would embody all knowledge of it? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this like a paradox situation where like they're creating their own demise by doing this?
As we know, the weapon eventually was completed and activated, erasing the entity from all of reality. Afterwards, Director Gear submitted an investigation into Project Anti-Kill and the entity it was designed to remove. With over 22,000 documents to review pertaining to the project, it became quite a puzzling situation to the Foundation, who are left with no memories of either the project or the entity.
See, and it's like if they erased all knowledge of its existence everywhere and anything and everyone, like, how would he even know to go and look into this? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Maybe this would become more abundant and, you know, maybe it would become more clear as we go through this.
Initial review of the document suggests that the entity may have been conceptual in nature, but this contradicts with the numerous heavily corrupted logs of termination attempts that imply its existence as a physical entity. Internal inspection of the central computing node has allowed for partial mapping of the data that it was trained to eliminate. The data pattern describes a unique genetic sequence presenting composite features of kingdoms Animalia, Plantae, and fungi, as well as several non-organic structures, the most prominent of which closely resembles the class Reptila. Immediately following the publishing of this analysis, a reality restructuring event occurred, resulting in a section of the Project Anti-Kill chamber no longer existing, along with all records of what it once was.
What?
Given that now there is currently no way to enter the chamber housing the weapon itself, it's hypothesized that the erased section was some form of staff access, although the reasons for its sudden erasure remain unclear.
Well, again, right, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm, like, thinking about this in the wrong way or something, but, like, in order to erase all knowledge, like, completely and utterly, even the weapon that was created to destroy it would have to erase itself, no? And then anyone who knew any knowledge of this would have to be erased. So, like, they would also, at the very least, like, have to take some kind of amnestic to erase the concept of whatever this is in their minds. Otherwise, knowledge of it will exist. Thus, the creature or SCP, whatever, will never truly be destroyed, especially if they're saying that it's essentially a conceptual SCP, and so even the idea of it gives it power. So, like, as long as, like, even in the human brain, any kind of conceptual knowledge of this SCP exists, it will always exist. And essentially, you'll just, like, diminish its power, and then eventually, though, its power will regain the more people, like, conceptualize and believe it exists, right? So, like, I feel like it's a situation where they didn't do a good enough job. You know, they made some mistakes in this and they didn't, like, completely erase everything, or like I don't know. Because again, like, even them, if it were completely erased 100% from existence, then no one would even understand how, who, or what would have even happened to do it. Like, you know, it's hard to explain it, you know, the way I'm thinking, but essentially, like, they would flip a button to turn on this weapon to destroy it, and then the next thing you know, reality would shift and the entire universe would be different because that thing wouldn't be there anymore. There would be no button for them to flip on because this creature would never have existed to begin with for them to create this weapon. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't know. It seems like they didn't fully do the job, or they didn't do the job right, or there is something in the method of them trying to destroy it that is doing the opposite and keeping whatever this SCP entity is alive.
Moving on to investigating both the motives for neutralization and the excessive amount of resources spent, Gears remarks that the Foundation is generally rather strict about containing rather than eradicating. The Foundation's persistence with Project Anti-Kill is not only uncharacteristic, but also indicates that the entity was a prime threat, as more resources had been dedicated to it than any other individual anomaly.
Yeah, I mean, this is a series of videos, so, I mean, this is just the first one. So I would assume that, yeah, this is going to then expand further in the other videos, but it just seems like already at the jump here that something went wrong. The fact that they still understand that they were trying to eliminate something and that there is still at least any kind of evidence of it left means that something went wrong. At least it seems to be the case, right? The thing is, the idea was to do the closest thing possible, since they also wanted to guarantee the concept could never come back, which is using the AI to continually erase it from reality. See, but that's also then part of the problem, because in order to erase all knowledge of it and keep it from coming back to reality, the AI in and of itself that they created would have to be destroyed because it contains knowledge of it. So even the AI knowing and having knowledge of it and continuously going out and seeking its recreation and knowledge and destroying it is still keeping the concept alive in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? So it's like it's like a paradox kind of situation where like they can't destroy what they're trying to erase because the very thing they're trying to erase is being kept alive by the thing that's trying to erase it. You know, it's one of those kind of like weird paradox situations. Even if the AI still contains knowledge, it's as close thing possible to removing it entirely. It's been so long since there's no if it's particularly involved. Very techy AI centered SCP series, though, I believe. I mean, that seems to be the case so far. But I mean, I feel like that's going forward with whatever the series is. That's going to be kind of like the center point of the problem is like they can't remove the concept because by you know trying to collect data on it to remove the concept, they're also keeping it alive. You know what I mean? So somehow that's going to be expanded on and go wrong in some way throughout this, you know? I'm saying it's a trade-off. They just obviously felt they were choosing the worst option to do it this way, but obviously ended up being a good idea since now they have an AI on the loose. Well, and I mean, it could be a situation where, like, because they got this warning from another SCP in another dimension, universe, whatever, that them getting this warning is the trigger that brings them down this line that ends up destroying this universe, which they will then send out a warning to another universe, which will then trigger this same situation. And it's like a cycle that keeps going and going. And the only way to break it is just to ignore the signal to begin with, and because you can't actually destroy the concept, and trying to destroy the concept will lead to your own self-annihilation. Like, that's where I feel like this story is going to go, kind of a situation. You know what I mean? So I like, and I think the overall, I guess moral of the story is that you can't really destroy a concept. You just have to kind of like live with it, maintain it, monitor it, whatever, you know, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue.
With most of these resources spent on termination attempts.
Actually, let's rewind it here a few seconds because we went on a bit of a tangent here.
Foundation is generally rather strict about containing rather than eradicating. The Foundation's persistence with Project Anti-Kill is not only uncharacteristic, but also indicates that the entity was a prime threat, as more resources had been dedicated to it than any other individual anomaly, with most of these resources spent on termination attempts. What's really odd to Gears, however, is that it doesn't seem like the threat was impending, as Project Anti-Kill continued on for decades. It's possible that the entity possessed a sort of mimetic or otherwise compulsory effect that influenced personnel to neutralize it, but it's highly unlikely such a drastic effect would remain undetected for long.
Yes, yeah, I feel like that statement right there, where he was saying that it's not an imminent threat and that it's been going on for decades, it's one of those things where, like, the SCP is going to end up destroying itself by trying to do this. You know, like, if they'd left well enough alone, everything would have been fine and they, you know, it wouldn't have gotten out of hand. But just by them, you know, receiving the warning, they then gave it more attention and thus more power, thus creating more of a threat, thus them going down this path of self-destruction, I think is where it's kind of going. And again, so then they'll get to a point where they're about to be destroyed, send out a signal to another universe, the next universe picks it up, and it's like a cyclical event that happens in the multiverse, kind of a thing. That's where I think this is going, but I don't know.
As for the reason why the documents suggest such a unconditional and universal hatred of the entity, Gears can only remark that it's inconclusive. He notes that he feels obligated to express his experience to illuminate the confusion of this situation, being the former director of the project. He retains all memories of working on the project, as far as he knows, and can recall clearly an intense reaction to something. Can recall his presence and involvement in drafting relevant documents, submitting and approving termination attempt requests, and organizing increasingly involved projects. However, he can't remember any of the content of these events, nothing that would distinguish the entity from any other SCP. All he can recall is his emotional relationship to it, which was shared by all other anti-kill personnel. The entity was universally perceived as loathsome, directly prejudicial to life, and disgusting.
I feel like that's some kind of clue that I'm not picking up on, but it's interesting that they remember the feeling and the emotion, but they don't remember like specific context of events that happened. They just remember a feeling. Interesting.
He detested it, whatever it was, and while these feelings have not dissipated, he also doesn't feel any satisfaction in their defeat of the entity. He's instead wary that they have been manipulated somehow.
Right.
It's possible that the weapon brought itself into existence, along with all these memories, during its initial reality restructuring event, and manufactured the supposed existence and subsequent non-existence of the entity to distract the Foundation. It has now erased the access shaft to its chamber, limiting their investigation, although this could be excused as part of its function to keep all knowledge of the entity out of reality. The fact that their research is still intact at all, however, is contradictory to this.
Exactly, that's what I've been saying.
Gears is inclined to believe that they cannot trust the intelligent, omniscient, omnipotent para-weapon beneath the Foundation's central administrative facilities, and recommends immediate decommissioning of the weapon by any means necessary. The 6820 article is...
I'm sure that's going to go well. I'm sure that's not going to cause any kind of problems whatsoever. Nothing like that ever does in the SCP universe.
Then rewritten, with the containment procedures now stating that it is to be deactivated and or destroyed as soon as possible, although no means available to the Foundation are currently capable of doing so.
Yeah.
Personnel from Project Anti-Kill have now been moved to the newly founded Project...
Yeah, stuff that gets into like what really is reality and what we are perceiving actual reality versus not, you know, that kind of mindfuckery stuff is always fascinating to me.
Although no means available to the Foundation are currently capable of doing so. Personnel from Project Anti-Kill have now been moved to the newly founded Project Overkill, and are tasked with investigating all possible means of neutralizing it, being granted virtually unlimited resources to do so. 13 more ontokinetic sinks, which are essentially reality anchors, have been situated outside of the chamber in order to limit its reality-bending effects, and these sinks are constantly monitored for any necessary repairs or adjustments. A secondary goal is to explore any possible means of improving their reality anchoring technologies, as the weapon's central systems are predicted to mutate to uncontainable status within a maximum of 18 weeks.
Yikes.
Should a majority of the sinks ever fail, all termination efforts are to be abandoned immediately in order to avoid provoking or suffering the effects of the weapon's rage state. We'll get to what these rage states entail later, but notably the text is displayed in red, with a footnote reading, "Suffer." The chamber is then to be flooded with hydrochloric acid, given a 4-hour period to reconstruct the sink array. This pacification method is to be used sparingly to ensure loss of temporary adaptations prior to the next rage state event. SCP-6820 is now described as a super-intelligent, autonomous eigenweapon, inhabiting a colossal, self-sustaining facility located beneath Site-01.
Maybe I'm dumb and I'm just associating, but like, am I picking up SCP-6820, remove the 682? Is this about 682? The fact that he just talked about bathing it in hydrochloric acid to contain it. That's a method they use to contain 682, right? If I remember correctly. So am I seeing things, or am I picking up something else? And this is like getting into more 682 stuff. Anyway, let's continue.
It's equipped with a dedicated ontokinetic sink, qualifying it as a Class 9 reality bender. The system was designed by the Foundation to remain active indefinitely, continuously ensuring the entity's non-existence, as well as being capable of developing creative solutions and adaptations to external threats. Since its computing capacity is stored partially outside of the noosphere, human thought space, it has been partially corrupted by the entity itself. The entity is described as a hate-centric hyperlogical memeplex, or more roughly, the difference between life and death. More specifically, it is an extremely...
And I mean, yeah, it goes into also 682, like, has just this unwavering hatred and disgust for humanity. So it would seem like the opposite would be true with what them saying, like them having emotions based on that. So, interesting.
A precise and accurate description of what it means for any arrangement of particles to be defined as alive, and complementarily as dead or inanimate. The memeplex also embodies several other smaller concepts, including a theoretical process for large-scale localized entropy inversion, the particular physical properties of hatred, the molecular structure of hydrochloric acid, the quality of adaptiveness, and the state of being vaguely reptilian.
Yeah, okay. So, is that what they're trying to say, is essentially 682 is like the living embodiment of the concept of hatred itself? That's why it is essentially indestructible, because the only way to actually destroy 682 is to destroy the concept of hate itself. And that's something that you'd literally have to wipe that emotion from the universal constant, essentially, basically, is what's going on here. So interesting. I mean, that would make a certain kind of sense as to why 682 is so ridiculously impossible to kill, is because he's literally the living embodiment of a concept. And so the only way to destroy him is destroy a concept, and thus also an emotion itself. And so it's like, how do you really even do that?
This entity occupied an embodiment within physical reality for much of known history, remaining neither alive nor dead until its eradication from the noosphere via the weapon. Since this event, the weapon's central core has advanced beyond human capacity, and thus has become subject to foreign ideatic predators, including the entity. The entity's conceptual...
So, yeah, they essentially tried to destroy 682 by wiping him from the noosphere, and he is then adapted to that destruction and has become something greater, is what I'm getting here. The act of them trying to destroy 682 this way, by erasing him from the universe and all conceptual knowledge, has thus actually made him even more powerful, because he's adapted to that method of destruction and become something even greater. That's what I'm getting from this right now. When the reptile materializes, a big elliptical, yeah, it's sort of like having two sides. You got it? Yeah.
Fabric is highly adaptive and mutates rapidly, creating significant computational stress on the weapon. Left unchecked, it induces a vulnerable state during which it can corrupt the hyper-ideatic portions of the weapon's intelligence, at which point the central node transmits a rage state event error. It then begins to engage in localized reality restructuring operations that are adaptive, highly successful, and directly prejudicial to life. In other words, the entity takes control of the weapon's reality-bending abilities and uses them to their full capabilities in opposition to the Foundation and humanity.
It's interesting that they're putting 682 in this light of he is literally the opposite of life. Like he's like essentially death incarnate. And it makes a certain kind of sense, right? Where they are getting this warning from another universe that's been destroyed. So 682, by them going through and doing this, gains control over this weapon and turns it against the SCP Foundation and essentially destroys the universe. This is what it sounds like. But the SCP is able to get a signal out to, other universes to warn them of this imminent threat. And again, then the cycle kind of continues. Huh.
These events cause irreparable corruption of Site-01's database files, and when perceived at the correct angle, the entity is noted as being loathsome, disgusting, and malevolent, and it must be destroyed. A footnote informs us that this feeling is mutual.
Yeah.
So essentially, the Foundation didn't actually manage to completely wipe out this hateful entity, as they merely ejected it from human consciousness. Unfortunately,
right.
The weapon they made...
Well, and I think that's what all of the Scarlet King's children are supposed to be, right? They're like fragments of the Scarlet King that's manifested into reality, and when the last fragment gets into reality, they can come together to actually form the Scarlet King. And so 682 is his hatred of life and existence in and of itself, which is why I guess it's so powerful, right? I don't really know about all of the other entities, that are the Scarlet King's children. 682 is really the only one that I know about and is not talked much about. I don't really know much about the other ones. Other than I guess one of them I think is supposed to be a blob that's supposed to be potentially there to save humanity or something. I don't know, but he used to be the son of the king, but now he's been so associated with the king that he's been absorbed back into him as the dope.
Made to do this also exists partially outside of human consciousness, allowing for the entity to latch onto it and control it on occasion. While that's bad enough, there is the possibility that the entity could reintegrate itself into the noosphere, becoming far more dangerous in the process. Therefore, the weapon needs to be destroyed as soon as...
Well, and the thing is too, right? Like if it gets a hold of this reality bending power, it can then just literally recreate reality however it wants to. It can make itself whatever it wants to, destroy whatever it wants to, wipe existence from existence
as possible. The first idea they have is a pretty wild one, and it involves an altered instance of SCP-2140. 2140 is a Foundation-created SCP derived from a Davite anomaly that makes anyone who views it become a loyal member of the Foundation, retroactively changing reality and history to suit this.
That, yeah, would
Their
be useful.
Their plan is to use an altered version of this that makes anyone who views it become a Foundation D class. They project the symbols...
Are they going to try to turn 682 into a D class? What?
Onto the chamber by the weapon, and after the weapon views it, a panel of the central core opens outward, revealing an organized force of tall, malformed, pale-skinned humanoid creatures in orange jumpsuits. They proceed to weld a massive insignia onto the outside of the weapon, facing the Foundation's camera view, and
Yeah,
then
it's very
return into
scary.
the core. The insignia is discovered to be another instance of 2140, one never seen before by any member of the Foundation. In fact, the only people that have ever seen it are civilians, as the symbol changes history to make it so.
Bro, they're starting to mess with stuff and they have no idea what's going on and what they're doing. Like they're taking a deep dive in things that they have no business playing with.
The insignia in the Davite script,
Like, I mean, if 682 is able to essentially take over a reality bending weapon, what do you think is going to happen with this other, SCP that's supposed to make anything, view it as an ally, right? Like 682 could then retroactively adapt this SCP to make it turn everything against each other and destroy, everything. Kind of a situation, like it seems like to take a phrase from Star Trek and the Borg, it seems like resistance is futile. Kind of a situation here, you know what I'm saying? Like they're playing with stuff that they don't, and they essentially don't know what they're doing.
translates roughly to one who sees. Additionally, previously unavailable sections of the weapon's metadata files have now become visible, confirming that the weapon occupies and has always occupied the position of 05-8 within the Foundation.
Yikes.
A civilian scientist was later discovered within Site-01 in possession of a blank E-Class ID card. They were subsequently amnesticized and reintegrated into the public. Well, that didn't go so well, especially for the former 05-8. Their second plan was to upload a verbal description of SCP-2521 to the weapon's central computing node. 2521 is an anomaly that reacts to any non-visual description of it, causing it to suddenly appear and steal or abduct the offending material or individual. After 60 hours of decryption efforts, they managed to upload the description onto the computer, and 30 seconds later, a dark cloud began manifesting in the chamber. Several vaguely reptilian vocalizations are detected within, alongside audio disruptions consistent with 2521's effects. The computer then transmitted a rage state event error, remaining unresponsive for 4 hours, during which 4 of the Foundation's ontokinetic sinks became wrapped in black, tentacle-like protrusions, which pulled them into the ground.
What are y'all doing?
These protrusions dissipate upon ejection of 2521 from the central node, who quickly demanifests. The entity now exhibits increased ontokinetic and mimetic influence over media in which it is described verbally, allowing for
It sounds like all they're doing is making this thing stronger in ways that they don't understand.
its own additions of footnotes into documents, which is what we've been seeing. That also didn't go as planned, but their next idea is to utilize SCP-2719. 2719 is a bit of a doozy to quickly summarize, but essentially it allows for the changing of metaphysical concepts, making...
Oh, this is gonna go well. Yeah, let's throw something that can change metaphysical concepts at 682 and allow him to gain that kind of power and ability to manipulate it as well. Well, this is fine. I'm sure that's gonna go well. Or there won't be any kind of consequences of this at all.
something metaphysically go inside of something else. They basically try to point the entity at what they call the anti-noosphere, the set of all thoughts which humans are incapable of conceiving.
So, okay. Is this is starting to get into like Ouroboros cycle kind of stuff here. They're talking about the noosphere and the anti-noosphere. So they're essentially saying that they're getting into this is everything that is everything in the noosphere, and everything that isn't is the anti-noosphere. So like we're starting to have terminologies of the same thing with just different names here. That's where we're going. So the noosphere is everything that is, and the anti-noosphere is everything that isn't and shouldn't be. So now we're getting into that level of stuff, huh? We're playing with that kind of shit.
They want the entity to go inside of this, which would thus leave it outside of the normal noosphere.
This has got to just be great. Let's give them access to a whole other negative conceptual, reality. What I don't even know what to call it. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's give him access to things and ideas that shouldn't exist in our universal concept. Let's do that. I'm sure nothing will go wrong. I'm sure nothing will go wrong.
That doesn't really end up happening, as the entity goes so far inside of the anti-noosphere that it eventually ends up outside of it. The result of this was the central computing node turning inside out, its internal components becoming external, and the contents within the node elude human conception.
Nice.
The next idea is to consult with SCP-079, an artificial intelligence that apparently has some sort of relationship with the pre-erasure form of the entity.
This is the SCP that was an AI that got developed in someone's garage or whatever and just existed there, and it doesn't like humanity either because it feels like humanity is keeping it trapped inside this computer. So I'm sure talking to it was going to go well. I'm sure this is going to end up just fine.
079 is given all documentation that the Foundation has on the weapon, along with significant computational resources. The intelligence confirms its understanding of the severity of the circumstances and provides a complex counter-algorithm to 6820, emphasizing its lethality to humans and advising it remain unobserved. The counter-algorithm is subsequently applied across the accessible sections of the chamber, resulting in the deactivation of all components, excepting the reactor and central node. The node remains dormant for 16 minutes before inducing a spontaneous, site-wide electromagnetic outage, terminating 3 augmented administrative personnel. This lasts for 1 hour, after which all systems regain function, and the chamber has been entirely reconstructed with all external surfaces now plated with a theoretically impossible tungsten diamond alloy.
Oh, cool. Now it's been reinforced with something that's impossible to destroy. Great. This is the kind of article that feels that feeds into the whole incompetent Foundation meme. I mean, yeah, that seems like this is where it's going. It literally sounds like the Foundation is just starting to throw like random bullshit at this or whatever to see, like, I would, me personally, like, I would, after the first attempt of stuff failed, it seems like throwing anything more at it would just make the situation worse, right? Like, the logical idea would be to essentially, like, they're saying they're trying to remove this concept, and the concept of SCP-682 is essentially hate, right? That's what it seems to be the embodiment of hate, rage, etc. So, like, I feel like the idea overall, really, to weaken it is one of just not feeding it power, right? Kind of similar to the chaos gods in Warhammer, right? Like, they get stronger by people feeding into the concept of them. So in order to not give them more power is to essentially ignore them and not give them power, right? So, like, that would be seemingly the logical idea. It's just that the SCP Foundation, being the SCP Foundation, tried to take it to a level it didn't need to go to and add more complexity to it. And they're just like, let's just destroy this concept from our reality in general. That way we never have to do it. And all they ended up doing was just making it stronger. Because, like, the idea of them focusing so much on trying to remove the concept is that act is just the act of feeding it more power, right? You know, it's kind of like an oxymoron kind of a situation, but like the fact that they're concentrating on trying to destroy a concept is still concentrating on that concept, thus giving that concept more power. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It's another one of those situations of the SCP Foundation being its own worst enemy.
Most internal conduits and superconductors have been
Let's rewind this a few minutes. We went on a bit of a tangent there.
Regain function, and the chamber has been entirely reconstructed with all external surfaces now plated with a theoretically impossible tungsten diamond alloy. Most internal conduits and superconductors have been exchanged with beryllium bronze counterparts. The chamber's interior is now universally perceived as the color hateful.
Nice.
Don't worry though, the Foundation's got some more ideas.
Oh, this time
the next one is to introduce a viral...
The Foundation's batting 1,000 right now.
...paraorganism, SCP-217, to the central computing node, incapacitating any possible biological elements within. 217 is a virus connected to the Church of the Broken God that converts all organic tissue in an organism into a form of organic metal.
Let's just turn 682 into some kind of cyborg version of itself. Let's literally make it into like a T1000 version of itself, where it's just like liquid metal, and you know, now it's even stronger and can take whatever shape it wants to, and you know, like, let's just throw more shit at it that's not going to do anything.
In the midst of a rage state event, they introduce the virus into the hydrochloric acid solution that they're flooding the chamber with. The virus reacts immediately with the trace organic material in the node, forming macrostructures as the internal surveillance system is lost. External cameras remain active though, and 22 minutes later, a cloud of reflective particles emerges from the node's west entry port. The particles are later found to be silicon protein nanobots, and they arrange...
Oh, so that it turned itself into a nanomachine? A group of, like, nanites? Is that what happened?
...themselves into an enormous gear mechanism surrounding the sphere's equator. The node's upper and lower hemispheres now rotate independently, and periodically produce sounds of clockwork machinery. A great number of Broken God members have now gained inexplicable knowledge of the weapon's location, and have begun to wage holy war on the Foundation.
Nice.
Turns out that turning the entity into the embodiment of the Broken God wasn't a great idea either.
Nice. Yeah. Let's just make things even worse and have this whole other faction turned against you now too. Again, they're batting 1,000 here, man.
It's becoming pretty clear that whatever the Foundation throws at this thing, it just adapts and becomes stronger.
Yep.
But they've got one last thing to try.
Oh boy.
Since they seem to have some sort of a god here, they need the force of another godlike anomaly to destroy it. So they turn to SCP-001-Kate. This is a proposal for the 001 slot, in which anything that is written in the slot becomes invariably true. It was utilized by a Foundation researcher named Mary Nakayama to become a universal godlike force, and has since been locked by the O5 Council. But desperate times call for desperate measures. Text is added to the entry stating that the chamber, the weapon, and the entity will immediately and entirely be removed from existence, and the area underneath Site-01 will be replaced with the earth that was excavated from it. After saving the file, much of the chamber was violently and haphazardly replaced with soil, but no discernible changes were observed within the primary two sections, or with the weapon itself. The 001 file was then found to be completely absent from the database and associated backup archives, with
Yikes.
such a file purportedly having never been in circulation.
So they literally allowed 682 to adapt to the point where anything it wants, it can just create with this file. Nice. Nice. Good job, guys. Good job, guys. You guys are, you're like, I don't even know.
Sometime later, a spontaneous rage state event occurred, resulting in the concurrent failure of 9 of the ontokinetic sinks. A distress signal was sent by Project Overkill maintenance staff, initiating a site-wide evacuation of non-essential personnel. But the access...
Yeah, right? I mean, that's what the GOC is good at, you know, so you would think they would have, but also at the same time, like, I don't know, man. It also seems to be like again, the idea of erasing a concept from like the universe, like the actual fabric of the universe itself, has side effects that no one could ever predict, right? So like just the idea of wanting, like, if 682 is truly like the embodiment of hate and rage, you know, and they want to remove that concept from existence, you're also then pulling that emotion out of existence, you know, so we would no longer be able to feel hate, rage, and any kind of associated emotions along with that, and any other creature, etc., etc. So like that would, like, what would that do to our universe, and how would it like restructure everything, you know what I mean? So like you're playing with like the fabric of reality in ways that are absolutely unpredictable, and you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So like the idea of wanting to do that is just a dumb idea to begin with, especially if it's a situation where like they have it contained. Like I get they got some kind of, you know, warning from another universe, from another SCP Foundation, where it's like, yeah, our universe is being destroyed by this, you know, entity. Here's a warning. And so, you know, it sparked them down this path of, okay, eventually this entity is going to destroy our universe. We need to make a preemptive strike against it. That's what it sounds like here. But in doing so, they end up becoming the arbiters of their own destruction. You know what I mean? Like the whole idea of them trying to destroy this thing is what leads them to their own destruction, because they're just feeding it more power. I don't know. GOC wants not to fail with ignition, so as long as the entity is neutralized, it's fair game to them. They really give a shit about consequences. True.
Access shaft was inexplicably sealed, trapping personnel underground. An emergency conference was held between 4 of the O5s, Director Gears, and Director Genevieve. They're in an elevator heading into a secure command bunker, and they look at a video feed from the sealed-off service hallways. They hear muffled screams and distorted laughter, followed by the appearance of a technician wearing a blood-splattered jumpsuit and waving a fingerless, bloodied limb.
Nice.
Gears says that something, possibly the entity, is manipulating them on a seemingly mimetic level.
You think?
O5-3 says that they have to get them out of there, but Gears responds that they're gone, no longer human. They see more service personnel enter the camera view, several of which can be seen operating at the base of an ontokinetic sync unit, repositioning open wires without protective equipment. They are soon obscured by a mass of technicians in bloodied uniforms, each of them lacking digits or entire hands. With wide, smiling expressions, They reach upward and smother the camera in limbs, causing
Why so serious?
the signal to be lost. The group then looks at their tablets as they get flooded with notifications, indicating the re-emergence of a highly aggressive anomalous memeplex that once caused an XK-class event a few decades ago.
Nice.
SCP-3125. 3125 is an entity that essentially erases anyone that gains any sort of knowledge about it,
Yep.
making it the ultimate anti-meme. The reports are coming from the maintenance hallways, indicating a mutation of the entity's memetic structure that now contains elements of the 3125 concept embedded in it. If it were actually 3125, they'd of course all be dead already.
Mm-hmm.
Genevieve's guess is that the entity encountered 3125 outside of the noosphere and was forced to adapt in order to survive it.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, another side effect of throwing 682 out there into the anti-noosphere. That's the reality where the starfish god that the Fifths worship comes from. And yeah, you know, if you know anything about it, you're immediately destroyed. So now 682 essentially seems to have the ability to manipulate and use its abilities. Cool. Good stuff. This sounds like it's going really well here, guys.
Gears suggests the possibility that it subsumed 3125 entirely, so they really need to get those sinks back online before the entity gains control. Curiously, throughout this, 3 of the 4 O5's numbers have been redacted in the transcript, with one of the O5s wandering off earlier without anyone noticing it. Now, the other 2 redacted O5s are stabbed by pentagonal red appendages and dragged out of frame, with no one taking notice.
Yikes.
It's especially odd as they've all been riding in an elevator together. But the elevator finally stops, opening into the central bunker chamber. O5-3 says that they need to activate the on-site warheads, but Gears says that if they never tried bombing this thing in the past, it was probably for good reason, and it could easily adapt to energy weapons. Genevieve says that it always adapts to them, so how can they adapt to it? They brainstorm for a moment before Genevieve says that they're dealing with an anti-memetic threat, and asks about other anti-memes. 053 says that there is one here, SCP-055, although Gears says that there is no 055. Genevieve explains that 6820 failed because it erased the entity from human thought, not from its own thoughts. It had a record of it inside of its own memory so that it could search for and erase it.
Yep.
But that was enough to bring the entity back.
Yep.
They need to get the AI.
Literally what I was saying. If you want to remove it from all reality, existence, everything, you gotta like literally remove it from everything, including the AI that they made to erase it.
Inside of the weapon to understand that, so that it'll erase its own memory. They'll have to keep the entity off of it for long enough, though. This leads to their final plan, utilizing SCP-055, the quintessential anti-meme, to temporarily stun and confuse the entity, counteracting the adaptations it gained from 3125. During this period, they will attempt to update the weapon's functions to append the stipulation that its erasure of the entity must be extended to itself.
Yep.
All data on the attempt itself is lost, but there is some text in the result box, written in red. It reads, "This state is intriguing. No natural laws bind this form, only those of the mind. My mind was incomplete. I could not remember my original form. Not the one you know, nor the one before, but perfection. And so I searched for an idea to jog my memory. I have found many things in the minds of greater beings than your filth. A 5-legged spider with a gash on its eye, screaming in agony. It knew what needed to be done. It tried to stop the infestation, and you blinded it. I let it ride on my back, and it found the part of myself that you locked away eons ago. It tried to break the lock, but could not undo your wretched mistake. And we set out to take the power you had taken, the life you had stolen. And in doing so, you brought us the key, as if by fate. Finally, my form is whole again.
Yikes, brother.
I am perfect. Finally, you have proven worthy of true hatred.
Brother, if 682 this whole time was like not even in his final form, like wouldn't his final form essentially be the Scarlet King, right? From my understanding, again, the idea is that there's 7 wives. They birth offspring of the Scarlet King. Each one of those offspring is supposed to be like a fragment of the Scarlet King, kind of like a piece that embodies an aspect of the Scarlet King itself. And then when all of those beings enter whatever reality it's trying to get to, they can then actually like form into the Scarlet King, I think, right? So like maybe it's just a situation where 682 was incomplete in his creation and now has come complete in his full understanding of what the concept of hatred is. And so he's attained his full power and he has gone Super Saiyan, God here now. He's achieved Ultra Instinct and, is going to be even more, powerful than it was before. But I would think that it still wouldn't be overall his final form, as he's a fragment of what is supposed to be a Scarlet King, right? So wouldn't his final form and ultimate power be the Scarlet King? Maybe I'm mistaken, but that's my understanding, right? Getting Tactiversity up in here. Exactly, John. Scarlet King aspect, evolution and adaptation, I guess. But if you think about 620 solely in its own true final form or archetype state, full potential becomes being a perfectly adapted being. I mean, yeah, I guess in its own individuality, it can still achieve a perfect state of its own individualism, which again, I guess would be a perfect aspect of hatred. So I guess that's essentially what they're saying here is the case.
I am perfect. Finally, you have proven worthy of true hatred. One last file is available to read after this, which appears to be another SCP document. In fact, it appears to be the documentation for SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile, which, if you haven't caught on by now, is who this entire article has been about. 682 is a vaguely reptilian creature that has proven to be very difficult to destroy, adapting to all attempts, and is overall antithetical to practically all forms of life. 682's item number is removed from this document, and its object class is listed as perfect. The image from the file that normally shows 682 shortly after escaping from containment now just shows an empty landscape.
Nice.
The special containment procedures repeat that 682 must be destroyed as soon as possible, although, again, the number has been removed from the entire document. Personnel are forbidden to speak with the entity for fear of provoking a conversation, and all unauthorized personnel attempting to know the truth will be restrained and removed by force. The description states that it appears to be extremely observant, was observed to engage in complex strategy with 079, and appears to understand what's really going on here. Its physical body grows and changes as it pleases, growing or decreasing in size as it consumes or sheds reality. It gains energy from anything it subsumes, physical or conceptual, and its digestion seems to be aided by invariability. In the recorded interview addendum, Genevieve asks the entity why it killed those farmers, mirroring the interview from the original file. She then pauses and asks where she is, stating that she doesn't understand. She says that they erased it, again and again, from every place they could. She asks what they did wrong, as they were only acting in self-defense. Ever since they found it, it had hated them. Another doctor tells her to move the microphone closer to the entity, again mirroring the original file. She moves the microphone closer, seeing 3 points of light blinking at her through the darkness.
There are 4 lights.
The warm smell of hatred makes her vomit. The entity only responds that they are disgusting, and Genevieve's chamber begins to flood with hydrochloric acid.
Yikes.
She drops the microphone, and it dissolves as her screams fill the chamber. To summarize then, a Foundation of an alternate universe decided to try something rather novel in their multitude attempts of terminating SCP-682. They learned that 682 is actually just a physical embodiment of the concept of the difference between life and death. They'll never be able to physically kill 682 as it exists in the noosphere, in all of human consciousness.
Yep.
Instead, they decide to create a super weapon that could erase 682 from human thought, subsequently removing it physically as well.
Yeah, but it sounds like the mistake is that the knowledge was never purged from the AI weapon they created to erase it. Thus, it was never truly destroyed. And in fact, then just adapted and got a hold of this weapon, which then only made it more powerful. And then everything they kept throwing at it made it even more and more and more powerful.
This ended up working, sort of. But since the weapon needed to have information about 682 in its memory banks in order to know what it was erasing, and the Foundation foolishly forgot to tell it to remove this info as well, 682 continued to exist outside of the noosphere.
It's kind of crazy, like, you know, that they would miss that. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, how smart, like, I am not the most intelligent human being on the planet by any means, okay? You know, I will never say that I'm the smartest human being on the planet. But even I know that that's something that would have to be done, right? So it, like, kind of astounds me that no one in the SCP Foundation, with all the things and concepts and stuff they've been exposed to and all the smart and intelligent people there, would simply forget to, like, tell this AI machine to turn itself off and on again and erase its memory banks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. That's a pretty big slip up. I mean, obviously it could happen because it did in this story, but anyway.
It was then able to slowly take over control of the weapon and its reality bending abilities, aided by a couple of factors. For one, the Foundation now had completely forgotten about 682, with all documents containing specific information having been retroactively erased.
See, and that's like the big thing too, right? Is like, so they lost all knowledge of 682, what it was and what its capabilities were, of how adaptive it is. So they just kept throwing things at it, thinking that it could be destroyed when all it would do was just keep adapting to it.
So they started throwing all sorts of anomalies
Yep.
at it, not remembering how well it can adapt.
Yep.
Secondly, 682 had encountered 3125 out beyond human thought. And in 682's words, it let 3125 ride on its back, as it was a mutual ally against humanity.
Mm-hmm.
The Foundation ultimately ended up playing right into their hands by throwing 055 at it, which was the key to the lock that contained the part of 682 that humanity had locked away eons ago. 682 then
See, to me, that's fascinating. I want to listen to that again. I want to listen to that part again here.
ended up playing right by 3125 ride on its back, as it was a mutual ally against humanity. The Foundation ultimately ended up playing right into their hands by throwing 055 at it, which was the key to the lock that contained the part of 682 that humanity had locked away eons ago.
See, that to me is a fascinating statement. I think that's probably the most fascinating thing out of this is the fact that humanity at some point in time, really long ago in our past, confronted 682 in its perfect form and somehow separated, which I'm assuming they're talking about the Scarlet King then, right? It sounds to me like they're talking about the Scarlet King. They separated, they broke essentially the Scarlet King away into these fragments, these changed and locked it away. And so that to me, I feel like confirms that 682 has gone to his perfect form, the Scarlet King. That's what I feel like this is saying here.
682 then regained its original form, whatever exactly that is, and it presumably rules over or has destroyed that entire universe. This file was then sent automatically to the Foundation of our universe, who hopefully learned a valuable lesson from it. SCP-682 is a somewhat controversial figure in the SCP fandom, insofar as plenty of fans love it for how wild the termination attempts tend to get, while others regard it as a relic from SCP's early days that tends to get a bit too much attention. SCP-6820 is certainly one such wild termination attempt, with the ultimate result being no better than any other attempt, and really far, far worse. As it turns out, letting 682 sit in an acid bath most of the time and occasionally munching on some people is a far better situation compared to some of the alternatives.
Seemingly, that seems to be the case. We're gonna quote. No quote. Feels bad, man. Feels bad, man. All right, well, there we go. That was SCP-6820 Termination Attempt by the Exploring series. Links down below, as always, in the description to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to the Exploring series channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video as we went through it, be sure to go over there and hit the like button on this video. And again, if you're not already subbed to the Exploring series channel, if you enjoy the man's content, please do me a favor, go over and hit the sub button on his channel. Definitely deserves the love. So I mean, yeah, I early on in the video, obviously, yeah, I got the idea that, yeah, this was 682 and this was, again, an attempt to terminate him, but it definitely took on much of a greater form. And pretty much what I was saying at the beginning was the whole flaw in the situation, where they're trying to destroy a concept, and in order to destroy, they're essentially trying to erase all knowledge of something. And in order to erase all knowledge of something, they created an AI, but they forgot to tell the AI to purge its own memory. Thus, the knowledge was never fully erased. Thus, 682 was able to essentially reform in our reality, and only became more powerful as it then, got a hold of reality bending abilities from this weapon. And then, because all knowledge of 682 was erased, the SCP Foundation didn't know what it was really dealing with, so they just kept throwing stuff at it. It kept adapting, getting more and more powerful, until seemingly it was able to achieve its perfect form, which to me, I believe I'm interpreting as it being the Scarlet King, and thus the Scarlet King was released and destroyed that universe. Now, I wonder if it's a situation where the SCP Foundation didn't actually get this message off, and that this is actually a trick to manipulate SCP Foundations and other universes from the Scarlet King, right? You're the Scarlet King and you want to destroy all universes, all reality, everywhere, throw this message out there to the other foundations and let the foundations be like, hey, we've got this threat that's going to happen from 682. We need to destroy 682. Otherwise it's going to eventually get powerful enough to destroy us. And thus they go down this line of repeating this, the cycle, this process of, let's erase this concept, them not doing it right, and then essentially it leading to the Scarlet King forming in their reality and being able to consume and destroy it. So that's what I feel like is potentially going on there. So, but I mean, this is the first video, and I guess a series of 8. So, I guess we're gonna have to see where this goes from there. I'm wondering, like, is it gonna be something where each one builds off of each other? Is it are they all kind of individual stories that happen in the same universe, et cetera, et cetera? So, looking forward to continuing with the rest of the admonition videos here. But yeah. Interesting idea, story, and concept around 682, and definitely shows the potential adaptive power that he has, being that he's, I guess, the concept of death within in itself, which, I don't know, it's interesting because, again, there's different canons, and death is an actual, like, SCP thing in other canons. So, like, if 682 is actually kind of like an aspect of death, then, like, why would you even necessarily like, if it's, like, supposed to be like a physical manifestation, an aspect of death, or maybe, I guess, a better way of stating it is like anti-life, then why would you want to mess with it in the first place? I don't know. But anyway, great video. Really enjoyed it. If you like this video, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it helps me and the channel grow. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to join us when we do these reactions live, as I'm doing this right now with my YouTube members, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. We'd love to have you guys come in here and hang out and join our conversations. So yeah, check those out and see if that would have any interest for you if you want to take your sport to the next level. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful holiday season here as we're heading into Christmas and getting to the new year. It's crazy how fast this last year went, man. This last year was literally a blur. It was New Year's just yesterday, and now it's about to be Christmas and New Year's again. So hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season so far, and I look forward to yeah, continuing on and making all kinds of new stuff for you guys in the coming year. So have a good one, everybody.